Homeless dad receives a life-changing makeover on Father's Day. Some people always find a way to help others in some way or the other. These small acts of kindness towards the needy people make them feel special because they don't come across such people very often. So it becomes memorable for them and helps them to have a new perspective. A similar incident happened when one day a hairstylist in Dallas helped a homeless dad living on the streets for many years and ignored by the people with a small act of generosity, which changed his life forever. It was just another hot sunny day and everybody was running back and forth to work. Some were dropping their kids to school or going to the office. In the midst of all the chaos, there was a shabby man sitting on the side of the road. He was looking around and protecting himself from getting hit by ignorant people who were absorbed in themselves and didn't care to look down. The man looked as if he was in his early 60s. He somehow managed to sit on the half-broken bench beside that tree that had been there for countless years. It was the only place the man used to feel a little safe about. He used to sit there for hours. His eyes were piggy and sunken into the depth of his skin as if he hadn't eaten for years properly. Time had stabbed his face with its wrath and now his eyes had sunk in as a consequence. His clothes were all torn and dirty as it had been years since he'd taken a bath. His nails had become brittle and had broken from the edges due to working in dingy factories where laborers were badly treated. Grains of sand rested on his shoulder and all over his tousled hair. His eyes lacked the shine. It wasn't because he was getting old, but it seemed like he had gone through a lot and was in constant pain. As usual, he was lost in his own thoughts and didn't see the uncontrolled bike coming his way. He didn't understand anything at that moment. All he felt was a sudden jerk and an unknown force pushed him towards the other side. The moment he regained his consciousness, it dawned upon him that he had been saved from a fatal accident. He saw a lot of people forming a circle around the bike, which had crashed into the broken bench. When he understood the situation, he immediately turned around to see who it was. A lady stood beside him. She was in shock at what happened while she was tightly holding him by the arms. Her other hand was on her mouth, covering her shocked face. Whereas the old man stood there, indifferent to the whole situation. The crowd started to disperse after things came into control a bit. The police too came on the spot. Luckily, no one had been injured during the accident, which was a relief for the police and people around. As the things came back to normal, the old man sighed heavily, watching his only safe place, the bench, crushed into several pieces. The woman was still standing beside him, watching him silently. The old man had no place to sit now, so he cleaned the place where he was standing with his hands and sat there, still lost in thought. The woman was now intrigued and wanted to know more about him, so she started to talk with the man, saying that she always sees him sitting there on the bench and asked him about his home and family. Tears started to roll down his cheeks as he heard the question. She'd never seen him crying like this and apologized. He was silent for a while and then opened his mouth to say something, but was too overwhelmed with emotion and no words came out, no matter how much he tried. Then after a while, he faced her and started telling his story. He told her that he wasn't homeless, but instead he had a family, but for some reason he had separated. And now, with his tousled, overgrown hair in miserable condition, no one would even recognize him anymore. The woman was moved to tears when she heard his story and couldn't withhold her emotions, silently leaving. When she reached her salon, all she could think about was the old man and his story. The woman was known for her generous nature and ran a salon. People loved her and her creative style of cutting hair. She was often named Mrs. Hot Hands. She'd been in this business for years and had changed the lives of numerous people through their hairstyles. That day, her mind was not in peace with her heart and she wasn't able to focus on her work. So she thought of taking a break from routine and walked in the corridors for a while. She'd always helped people in her life in whatever way was possible, and now she couldn't think of any way in which she could help him. Wouldn't she be able to find a way? When she was returning home from her salon, she stood still at a distance watching the old man. Her coworker stood right by her side and asked why she stopped so abruptly. She pointed towards the man and asked if she knew anything about him. She recited the same story as he did in the morning, but she also told her that he had 4 kids, 11 grandchildren, and 3 great-grandchildren, and wanted to meet him. After she was done with dinner, she searched on her laptop to find out about the old man's family, but she couldn't find it as there were several similar stories just like his. It was nearly midnight when she'd searched through several stories but failed to find any clue about the man's family. She barely slept that night because all she could think about was how to help him. Unable to find his family, she maintained a routine of stopping there with the old man for a while and feeding him some homemade food and cookies. She'd generally leave half an hour early from her house to meet him in her journey to the office. This would really make her feel good that she was able to offer some help, but then too there was the thought in the back of helping him find his family. Would she be able to succeed? As the month of May started, Texas's weather had become more humid than before. She got worried about the old man as he used to live in a dingy place with no ventilation and offered him to help change his place. But he politely refused her offer because he knew the amount of money he had. His place was the only one he could afford. She felt bad for a while, but she knew she had to find a way very soon. One day, she was going down the road and she saw a beautiful poster depicting the relationship between a father and a daughter through a quote in the store. She stood there for a while and several thoughts started to run in her mind. The kids in the store were buying gifts or writing poetry for their fathers using all the skills they were good at. What would she be planning to do? She thought that as everyone was showcasing their talent, why didn't she do something she was good at? So while she headed back home after work, she invited the old man to her salon the next day. The man was surprised, but due to her consistent and persistent requesting, he had to give in and accepted her invite. What was she planning to do? The old man was excited and nervous too because it had been years since his face properly had been seen, let alone gone into a salon. So the next morning after finishing his work, he stood there waiting for Mrs. Hot Hands without having a clue what miracle she was going to do today. She smiled as she saw him on the footpath waiting for her and waved at him as she approached. As she reached the same side of the road, the old man finally asked her what she was planning. She smiled and said she knew he wouldn't take any favors from her, but as Father's Day was coming, she wanted to think of gifting him something. He was surprised by this and asked about the gift. She said she was going to give him a little makeover. He was surprised when he heard her plan as he didn't even remember when was the last time he'd gone for a cutting, and that too in a salon. So he had mixed feelings about it. He was nervous as well as excited about his transformation. He was getting ready and hoped it would help him find his family too. Would his desires come true? Soon she made him sit on one of the chairs and covered his shirt with a black cover and started to cut his hair. The salon's floor cluttered up with long, untidy and messy hair. The dirt in the hair had gone so deep that it clamped the hair in such a way that it became difficult for Mrs. Hot Hands to comb it. But she was determined to give the man a new look. Would she be able to succeed? He started to talk about his past as she cut another strand of hair. In all the conversation, he told her that his name was Larry Green and he turned 60 a couple months ago. He also told her certain details about his past that he remembered faintly because it had been quite a few years that he'd been separated from his family. He also desired to reunite with his family again. He was positive his transformation would help him. He also thought this transformation might be able to give his career new hope, and he would also be able to find new opportunities he was denied because of his looks. He also said he remembered teaching psychology for a while before he lost contact with his family. While he was recalling his past, she was trying her best to give him a new look that would change his life forever. She was doing this to make Larry feel special as for the past few years life had been rough for him and the weather had been extremely harsh. She wasn't a miracle worker and giving a haircut was the only thing she could do. Though she always wanted to find his family and help him reunite with them, she wasn't able to find any clue, so this was the only way she could make him feel better. She appeared as an angel in his life and was constantly making positive changes for him, fetching him homemade food and cookies every other day. Who does that for a stranger whom they met a couple weeks ago? She was trying her best to make him look exactly the way he used to be. Would she be able to transform him? Later in an interview, Mrs. Hot Hands told a famous website about her experience and said, "We just want to make him feel good and show him just because he's not financially stable, he can still be appreciated." She proved that there exist people who not only follow their passion, but help others with it too. Ever wondered about having no home to come to in the evening when you're all tired and exhausted, finding no one who gives you strength and hope of a better future? On top of it, people living in the road forget how love and warmth from their loved ones feels like. Here, Larry Green was lucky to meet Mrs. Hot Hands, who reminded him that he was a human just like her. He'd been living on the street for almost 2 decades before his life savior jumped in to make him feel human again. But living on the street in dingy areas without any human contact, he'd lost all hope of looking like one. Mrs. Hot Hands had truly come out as a guardian angel to him and made him look like a decent person again. His makeover started with a simple haircut, but it meant the world to him. Previously, people hadn't even asked him for water or a loaf of bread, and here she was transforming him from head to toe. "I know she's made me look like somebody. I don't feel as low. I don't feel like I'm a nobody," he said. No doubt it was one of the perfect Father's Day gifts that he could have ever received. Because of his condition, it had become hard for him to identify himself, so how could he have expected his family to recognize him? And now this transformation had inculcated a new hope in him. He was amazed when she didn't stop at his scalp. She trimmed and shaped his untidy, overgrown beard, and when he faced the mirror, he was surprised by his transformation and said, "It's a blessing. I can see the real me." After hours of hard work, when Mrs. Hot Hands finished cutting the old man's hair, Larry was completely unrecognizable. She didn't stop there and also gifted him some new clothes, which he needed desperately. Larry was looking at the mirror again and again, and it seemed like he was liking the new version of himself that the stylist had transformed him into. Not only did the stylist help him get into a new version of himself, but she also booked him a room in a hotel so he could have comfortable sleep at least for a day or two. There, he could take the benefit of a hot shower, which helped him get rid of all the exhaustion. He was totally overwhelmed by the generosity that he had been shown for the past few days. She knew only a comfortable bed and a hot shower wouldn't be enough. It might have been years since he'd eaten proper food and dined with friends. She even doubted if he had any acquaintances, let alone friends. She hoped that this Father's Day gift might open new doors of possibilities as well as bringing opportunities. Mrs. Hot Hands knew that there was no use of providing him the basic amenities just for one night, so she thought of a way through which the help could be extended beyond the Father's Day treat. So on June 15, 2019, the stylist created an account on GoFundMe to help raise help for this old man. Would she be able to raise sufficient funds? Though these days it has become easy to make a fundraising account and avail all the benefits by a fundraiser than by a person who needs the money. But here the generous stylist was not only big-hearted, but also had very clear intentions. So when she made the account, she made it transparent that the sum of money collected through the account would be directed only to Mr. Larry Green. It wasn't the first time she'd done something of this sort, so people were quite acquainted with her work. So as soon as she made the account, people started to pour in to help the old man come out of his miserable condition. And soon after the magic of the account worked, he received $1,870 by 103 donors. Now his dream of going back to his family seemed possible. Her work was immensely praised by people, her Instagram comments filled with praise and wise words. Not only had she made people look cool and trendy, some even consider her as an inspiration for doing good work too. One of her followers, who also happened to be siblings with her, called her Angel on her GoFundMe page and on Instagram. Likewise, one of her followers considers her an inspiration to all of us. Mrs. Hot Hands' Instagram bio page reads, "I slay hair for a living," and there's no doubt about it. It had been over 2 decades since she'd been in the hair industry and slaying hair and gaining popularity. She isn't simply a hairstylist. Many of her makeovers had changed the lives of many people over her 20-year career. Hopefully, this transformation would bring some significant changes in the old man's new life. Larry Green wasn't the only one who'd received her unconditional love. Another homeless woman named Mimi too came in contact with her a few months back. She too was given a full makeover just like Larry. She helped the woman to raise money to support herself as well. With the help of her amazing and helpful followers, she was able to help the woman and supported her through her initial phase of regaining her identity and kickstarting her career. Mimi was grateful for this help and support that she'd been given unconditionally. She's now a totally different person and works in a nice place. It's quite amazing how looks could open closed doors. A change in hairstyle sometimes can boost your confidence level, and with Mrs. Hot Hands' expert advice and creative mind, anything is possible. She's known to be a miracle worker, and just like Mimi, she gave another miraculous makeover to a client suffering from alopecia, with a protective style that helped her restore her forgotten smile. Mrs. Hot Hands has not only changed people's lives by simply giving them a fancy hairstyle and some money to sustain them, but also given them a new perspective in life. With a new point of view, they were now enthusiastic and felt more confident about themselves. This gave a new direction to them to work with more zeal in their lives. Hopefully, she continues to do the good work she does, and also for Larry to reunite with his family soon.